We will now be joined by two guests from the West Bloomfield Police Department. We are joined by Deputy Police Chief and Public Information Officer Curt Lawson, as well as Lieutenant Eric Tilley. Deputy Chief Lawson, Lieutenant Tilley, welcome to the program. How are you today?
Well, thanks for having us. It's great to see you, Tyler.
Yeah, good talking to you too. How's your department holding up? How are the officers?
Well, the department's holding up very well. As I said in the previous interviews with you, our run volume is significantly lower than we're used to, which is not a bad thing because it's a little bit less contact that we're having with the public. We are really doing a good job, in my opinion, keeping our officers safe. We got a lot of protocols in place. We check their temperature several times a day. We're really pushing the hygiene, and all of us, all the officers and the entire team are wearing masks. And that's kind of going to be the message that we're pushing out to the community today, is that we don't want you to be complacent. People are going to be headed out, nice weather. They're going to be golfing. They're going to be doing all these things, enjoying themselves outside, but they have got to remember that social distancing. They've got to remember that they need to wear facial coverings and enclosed public spaces. And we encourage it anytime they're out and in proximity with other individuals.
Absolutely. And with the governor's new executive order requiring PPE to be worn, face masks in particular to be worn in public places like grocery stores and so on. We recently did a public service announcement with the police department. Civic Center TV did regarding proper use of PPE, but not everybody's going to be able to get a face mask like you're wearing, like Lieutenant Tilley is wearing, Curt Lawson. And if they are making their own PPE at home, their own do-it-yourself PPE, what are some tips from the police department or from the Emergency Operations Center in West Bloomfield that you may be able to provide to the public in that regard for making effective PPE?
Well, we have a couple of examples right here, but I'm going to let Lieutenant Tilley kind of give you some suggestions that come directly right from the CDC.
So what we know from the CDC is that any homemade personal protection equipment, masks, they need to be multiple layered. So this one that is being held up here would need to be folded in half or be some sort of thicker material. There's actually some information on the CDC that shows which materials work best. For example, a loose knit scarf is not going to work great, but denim seems to work very well against viruses similar to this. So my suggestion would be if you're going to make your own mask, please check with the CDC recommendations. Make sure that it complies with their recommendations so that it is effective. Like I said, a loose knit scarf is a bad example, whereas denim would be a good example.
Right, because you're trying to prevent particulate matter from your mouth from getting out into the air, from particles that are in the air to be able to be picked up by you, especially in a public place, and especially as people begin to come out of their homes and go back to work. That has to be absolutely paramount for people to be able to make sure that they're protecting themselves, but also protecting everybody else. So on that note, as people come out of their homes and things get busier out and about, how can we, the community, help people in law enforcement and just the general public to maintain safety with the public now being a lot more busier than it has been the last couple of months?
Well, we would suggest that what would really help us out is be proactive, have an attitude that you're going to go out and you're going to be safe. So make sure that you always have these face masks, these facial coverings with you, that you're having that proper hygiene if by chance that you touch a surface that you don't know if it's been disinfected. And even if you just get in a routine that you're going to use hand sanitizer, soap for 20 seconds, and you're going to keep that social distancing. That is going to help us. Our biggest concern, number one, is complacency as we move forward. And two, that we are going to encounter a spike and we're going to go backwards. Right now, we're making some pretty good progress moving forward. Seems like we have seen a trickle down of the curve that we saw last month. And that's exactly what we wanted. But as we enter the warmer periods and people are going outside and they're doing more socialization, we're concerned that that complacency is going to set in and we're going to have a spike. And that's our biggest fear.
And with new requirements in place from the governor's updated executive order, people are required in indoor facilities such as grocery stores and box stores and whatnot to wear PPE. Is there going to be any enforcement of that from a law enforcement standpoint? Curt Lawson, Deputy Police Chief and Public Information Officer, Lieutenant Eric Tilley from the West Bloomfield Police Department. Any sort of enforcement on your guys' end if people are not wearing PPE in public places?
Well, there are no criminal sanctions that go with the facial coverings, but for us, and it's been through the entire process, beginning and the beginning of March, it's been an educate the public on what keeps them safe. Certainly at the township government level, they are finishing touches on a very comprehensive plan to bring employees safely back to the workplace. And I think businesses all over the state of Michigan are beginning to do that. And it's got to be a priority to put those safeguards in place to not only take care of the employees, but to take care of the public. So we don't know what the new normal is going to be, but I can assure you that I believe facial coverings is going to be one of the new norms going throughout the summer.
And so with there not being any criminal side necessarily to not wearing these protections in public, can businesses deny service to people if they aren't wearing these masks?
From my review of the executive order, it's my understanding that, in fact, that they can.
And so with that being the case, and there being precautions out there within this executive order for these businesses to take their own precautions and make their own decisions as to what's safe in the business in their business, as these businesses have reopened since the executive order on Friday, and as they continue to over time, the Emergency Operations Center, your team over at the police department in West Bloomfield, they have a lot of interaction with these businesses on a normal day. What are you seeing from them now that that things are starting, particularly retail is starting to come back? What kind of precautions are they taking, and how effective of a job are they doing in keeping their facilities and their customers safe as that happens?
Well, I can tell you what we're seeing is a lot of cooperation. I know one of the individuals that you're going to be interviewing later today is Greg Colombo from Pine Lake Country Club. And he is an individual that I've had a lot of discussion on the phone with. He's been a great partner. And they wanted to golf. You know, they wanted to let their members go out and golf, but they were very cooperative in discussing with me and the executive staff here on interpreting the executive order. And we have seen that across the board with businesses where there's been a little bit of confusion. There's quite a few gray areas with these executive orders, and we've helped them interpret them and interpret them in a way where we think it's best to keep everyone safe. So I would say that our business community here in West Bloomfield has been extremely cooperative with us. We have had to take no enforcement actions, and it's just educate, educate, educate.
This time, you mentioned that that West Bloomfield Township is beginning to put plans in place to bring their employees back to Town Hall, back to the Civic Center complex in West Bloomfield on Walnut Lake Road. So with that being the case, first responders are going to, I would presume, are going to play a key role in executing that and making sure that the employees are coming back safely. What kind of role, as far as you can tell us at this time, do you believe or do you know that our first responders are going to play in returning our municipal employees to work?
Well, our Emergency Operations Center has been more of an advisement component to the plan that's been put in place. And the plan that's put in place, the timeline is able to be shifted depending on if we do in fact have a spike, what the data tells us. So we're being very flexible, and we're being very careful with the procedures that we put in place keeps everyone safe. One thing I want to note before we end it here, I just remind our residents that the May 2nd Hazardous Waste Day that usually takes place right on the township campus here, which is hugely popular, and we get thousands of people, has been canceled, and we'll hope to do it later this fall, but there will be no Hazardous Waste Day May 2nd.
Okay, yeah, but we, so again, May 2nd, they do that twice a year, the Household Hazardous Waste, the spring event of that, for precautionary reasons, has been canceled. Deputy Chief Curt Lawson and Public Information Officer and Lieutenant Eric Tilley, anything else you'd like our audience to know that we haven't discussed yet, or anything else that you would like to say at this time?
Well, I just think it's important to remember that education is one of our best defenders. If we can educate our family, make sure that especially our teens are obeying the proper social distancing, using proper personal protection equipment, and keeping their high-touch areas clean. They're going to be, in my opinion, really itching to get out of the house now as we're rolling back to some sort of new normal. And I just think it's important for the parents in the community to really educate their kids and their teens about how they still need to be safe, because they're going to go out into the public, but whatever they come in contact with, they're bringing back home. So just moving forward, I think it's important to educate not only ourselves by maybe watching the video that was made by you guys regarding the proper use of PPE, but also to take the time to talk with our children.
And that process can be tough because these families, they've been cooped up for a couple of months. They've been stuck at home, and maybe they have some plans in place, but now with everybody returning to society, gradually, albeit, there's some more gray areas there, and there's some more dangers that may be in place. What process do you suggest these families go through to formulate those plans, and better yet, to execute those plans to keep each other safe?
Well, I think there's a lot of information out there. But the video that the deputy chief made is a great way to start about how to properly use PPE, also discussing when and where to use it. And at this point, I think it's safe to say you should use it anytime you're having contact with anyone outside of your own home. I think it's safe to do that. And I think that's really where you want to go with that, is just spend the time to talk to them. If you have questions about it, you can certainly call the police department. We're happy to answer any questions. Or you can find your own information online. Just make sure you're using a reputable source like the CDC.
All right, Eric Tilley, Lieutenant from the West Bloomfield Police Department, alongside Deputy Police Chief and Public Information Officer Curt Lawson, also from the West Bloomfield Township Police Department. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
You too. Curt Lawson, Deputy Police Chief and Public Information Officer, Lieutenant Eric Tilley, both from the West Bloomfield Police Department.